Even if you don't know the Verve, you've probably heard their 1997 single, Bitter Sweet Symphony. It's been used in ads, TV shows, and films. It was nominated for a Grammy Award for Best Rock Song and remains the Verve's most definitive single. It launched the band into stardom, and it's arguably one of the greatest songs of the last 25 years. It feels grand, and that's thanks to its orchestral elements. The Verve's frontman, Richard Ashcroft, was almost ready to scrap the song until producer Martin Glover put the strings over top of it. That's when Ashcroft really got excited. But that's also where the Verve's biggest problem lied. The Verve layered nearly 50 tracks of instrumentation to create Bitter Sweet Symphony, including a string sample from Andrew Oldham Orchestra's recording of The Last Time. The group now had to get permission to use the sample in their song, but it wasn't that easy. The 1960s birthed orchestral pop. Producers were inspired to rearrange popular songs into full orchestral versions, which was the case with Andrew Oldham and the Rolling Stones storybook. Oldham was the Rolling Stones manager and mentor at the time, and taking a note from the Beatles producer George Martin, he released a collection of instrumental versions of hits from the Rolling Stones, including The Last Time. The group was granted the license by DECCA Records to use the 5-note sample and released the single in the summer of '97. But the Verve couldn't release the record until they had permission from abkco, who controlled the publishing rights for everything the Stones recorded up until 1971. The Verve didn't think to get permission for the underlying Stones track that inspired the composition until after their track was completed. And why would they? The orchestral version was only inspired by the Rolling Stones track. So the Verve's manager, Jazz Summers, calls up abkco for the publishing clearance. They say no, and so Ken Berry, head of EMI Records, heads to New York himself to meet with abkco's Alan Klein, a man who's been called the music business boogeyman. He was a financial auditor who took his skills into the music world. Labels feared him. He would review the accounts of artists and find them thousands of dollars still owed to them. Paul McCartney despised him, and while he did save the Beatles from potential bankruptcy, his management of the group was a big reason for the Beatles' breakup. And he didn't just own the Rolling Stones publishing rights. The band didn't even know what they were signing away when they made their contract. Anyways, Barry plays Klein the Verve's completed album Urban Hymns, and outlined how Bitter Sweet Symphony would be the obvious lead single, and that it would be essential that they got the license to use this sample. Initially, Klein said no, that there was no sampling of our music. He simply didn't believe in it. But Klein realized that the band were in a tight spot, and was willing to make an exception to his rule, granting them a license. The Verve says the deal was initially for a 50-50 split, but when the single started to perform well, Klein claimed that the Verve broke the license agreement and used a larger portion of the sample than agreed upon. Klein ended up suing the band for plagiarism. The Verve decided to settle out of court, thinking it would be cheaper than fighting a legal battle that might not go their way. Klein demanded 100% of royalties and songwriting credits attributed to Mick Jagger and Keith Richards. So remember that Grammy nomination? It had Jagger and Richards' name on the ballot too. Ouch. The Verve lost everything. They couldn't earn money from their biggest hit. They had no control over the song's use. Nike wanted to use the track in an ad, but after the Verve said no, the shoe manufacturer purchased the license from Klein. The last thing the Verve wanted was their music being used in commercials. Klein and his label began exploiting the track in ads all around the world. To date, Bitter Sweet Symphony is one of abkco's best earning compositions. It also offered a nice payday for Stones members who had nothing to do with it. This should have been between Oldham and Ashcroft only. And speaking of Oldham, he would later sue the Verve for $1.7 million in mechanical royalties. But the songwriter who arranged Oldham's orchestral version of The Last Time was a man named David Whitaker, who wasn't even listed as a composer and received no credit during the whole legal dispute. If anyone was going to get credit for Bitter Sweet Symphony, it should have been this guy. And it gets worse. In 1999, Q Magazine interviewed Keith Richards and asked if he believed the result was fair. He said, "I'm out of whack here. This is serious lawyer shit. If the Verve can write a better song, they can keep the money." But even the Rolling Stones track was inspired by another song. This could be the last time, maybe the last time, I don't know. This may be my last time, maybe my last time. And the Staple Singers never got any royalties from it, nor did the Stones offer any. It's a traditional song that goes back in time. No one owned the rights to it. Anyone could have made their own rendition. And this wasn't uncommon for classic rock bands to rework songs by black artists into hits, and then completely lock the track down with copyrights. Culture has always built on the past, but it seems like the past has always tried to control the future. Copyright was originally created to encourage people to create, not stop them. In the 2003 book, According to the Rolling Stones, Keith Richards said this about the Staple Singers track. It gave us something to build on, to create the first song that we felt we could decently present to the band to play. The Last Time was kind of a bridge into thinking about writing for the Stones. It gave us a level of confidence, a pathway of how to do it. And once we had done that, we were in the game. Interesting, since they showed no generosity when someone tried to build upon their work. Or rather, from an inspiration of their work. To be fair, this wasn't the Rolling Stones' fault. This was all Alan Klein's doing, and what any other label executive would have done in his place. Maybe not as extensively, but since creativity became a commodity, the money is all that matters. And when I'm listening to Bitter Sweet Symphony, I know I'm listening to the Verve. First and foremost, look at all these wonderful people, patrons. You guys and girls are looking great. I make these videos because of and for you, so thank you for the continued support. I'd also like to thank Audible for sponsoring this video and kind of changing my life. Now that summer is approaching, my classes are over, I'm already spending more of my time outdoors and less time with a book in my hand. I already don't read as much as I probably should, which is why Audible has been perfect for me. I never have to abandon a book, or I can listen while driving, cleaning, or just sitting at my computer. I'm currently listening to Astrophysics for People in a Hurry by Neil deGrasse Tyson. If you don't know, deGrasse Tyson is an astrophysicist, a fantastic space communicator, and in this book he takes some of the most complex ideas about our universe and translates them in a way that people like myself, the layman like myself, can understand. Plus, it's also narrated by him, and his voice is so buttery smooth. So go to audible.com/middle8 and you'll get a 30-day free trial and a free audiobook of your choice. So you can take Neil deGrasse Tyson with you on your next summer adventure. I know a lot of you are also on mobile, so you ladies and gents can text middle8 to 500 to get your 30-day free trial and free book that way. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like rating. Subscribe to learn more about the music you love, and tell me, do you think this whole thing was fair? Did the Verve use too much of the sample, and should have Jagger and Richards have gotten songwriting credits? Let me know what you think in the comments below, and keep listening.